Hey y'all, I'm so glad you're here. In this video, we are going to do a verbal Bible study of 1 Peter chapter 3. Today, for 1 Peter chapter 3, I'm going to use my Life Application Study Bible so that I can get a little bit more background on the text and more in depth. Start reading at 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 1. In the same way, wives, you must accept the authority of your husbands. Then, even if some refuse to obey the good news, your godly lives will speak to them without any words. They will be won over by observing your pure and reverent lives. Do not be concerned about the outward beauty of fancy hairstyles, expensive jewelry, or beautiful clothes. You should clothe yourselves instead with the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of gentle and quiet spirit, which is so precious to God. This is how the holy women of old made themselves beautiful. They put their trust in God and accepted the authority of their husbands. For instance, Sarah obeyed her husband Abraham and called him her master. You are her daughters when you do what is right without fear of what your husbands might do. I am reading now out of my Life Application Study Bible on submission. Submission is a voluntary cooperation with anyone out of love and respect for God first, and then secondly, out of love and respect for that person. Submitting to non-believers is difficult, but it is a vital part of leading them to Jesus Christ. We are not called to submit to non-believers to the point that we compromise our relationship with God, but we must look for every opportunity to humbly serve in the power of God's Spirit. In this same Bible, a small little summary of 3:1-7, a changed life speaks loudly and clearly. It is often the most effective way to influence a family member. Peter instructs Christian wives to develop inner beauty rather than being overly concerned about their outward appearance. Their husbands will be won over by their love rather than their looks. Live your Christian faith quietly and consistently in your home, and your family will see Christ in you. And oh, isn't that a hard one? We live in a society that tells us that the way we look is the most important thing about us. If we're listening to society, our focus should be on our face and our body. I don't know about y'all, but for me, that's what I see in this world. Not only through the clothing and the makeup and the advertising and music videos and these music artists these days that are just, whoo, girl. We live in a world that just pounds into your head that you need to show it off. You need to flaunt it. Everything you got should be just out there for the whole entire world to see, right? If we're being honest with ourselves, that doesn't make you feel good. That just makes you feel like you're seeking attention or just waiting for an argument, right? Like, oh, I can wear whatever I want to and can't nobody say nothing to me. Like, you're on guard because you know somebody's gonna say something to you. A man is going to say the wrong thing because of how you're dressed and you're going to get offended, or another person is going to comment on how maybe you shouldn't do that, and you're going to argue. You're setting yourself up for a fight, first off, because you feel like you have to defend it. Secondly, you're attracting the wrong people. Our focus should not be on how we look. Our focus should be on God. If we're living a godly life and we are practicing our faith, the people around us are going to see this. It's going to change who you are. If you're a practicing faithful Christian, it's going to be hard for you to go out and do bad things and talk in inappropriate ways, because that is going to bother you. You're not going to want to flaunt your body. You're not going to want to be involved in the world. You're going to want to separate yourself from that. So if you let go of all of these societal norms, focus on God, and everything falls into place. Our beauty on the outside fades anyway. We get older and it kind of fades away. The beauty of our youth is not the same when we're 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. So to focus so much on that, and then when you're older, what are you going to have? You're not going to have anything, right? You're going to be just, I would feel bad for you. Now I will move on to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Husbands, in the same way, you must give honor to your wives. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. Now I'm going to read out of my Application Study Bible for a brief explanation on Peter 3:7. When Peter calls women the weaker partner, he does not imply morally or intellectual inferiority, but he is recognizing women's physical limitations. Women in his day, if unprotected by men, were vulnerable to attack, abuse, and financial disaster. Women's lives may be easier today, but women are still vulnerable to criminal attack and family abuse. A man who honors his wife as a member of the weaker sex will protect, respect, help, and stay with her. He will not expect her to work full-time outside of the home and full-time at home. He will lighten the load whenever he can. He will be sensitive to her needs, and he will relate to her with courtesy, consideration, insight, and tact. Another brief tidbit to add. If a man is not considerate and respectful to his wife, his prayers will be hindered, because a living relationship with God depends on relationships with others. Jesus said that if you have a problem with a fellow believer, you must make it right with that person before coming to worship. That is in Matthew 5:23 through 24. This principle carries over to family relationships. If men abuse their positions to mistreat their wives, their relationship with God will suffer. 1 Peter chapter 3, starting at verse 8. Finally, all of you should be of one mind. Sympathize with each other, love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tender-hearted and keep a humble attitude. Do not repay evil for evil. Do not retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do, and he will grant you his blessing. For the scriptures say, if you want to enjoy life and see many happy days, keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and do work to maintain it. The eyes of the Lord watch over those that do right, and his ears are open to their prayers. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. Referring to the Application Study Bible on 1 Peter 3:9. In a fallen world, it is deemed acceptable by some to tear people down verbally or to get back at them if we feel hurt. Peter, remembering Jesus' teaching to turn the other cheek, Matthew 5:39, encourages his readers to pay back wrongs by praying for the offenders. In God's kingdom, revenge is unacceptable behavior, as is insulting a person, no matter how indirectly it is done. Rise above getting back at those who hurt you. Instead of reacting angrily to those people, pray for them. Too often we see peace as merely an absence of conflict, or we think peacemaking is a passive role. But an effective peacemaker actively pursues peace. Build good relationships. That is so true that we do live in a fallen world, and it is completely acceptable to tear people down. It is encouraged. I have heard so many times throughout my life, if something's going wrong or somebody offends you or hurts you, the people around you are like, yeah, go get them, say this and blah, 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 blah. They like egg it on to go and have you verbally attack somebody. But that is not what we want to do. If we're following the teachings of Jesus, as hard as it may be, peacemaking is the better option. We have to trust that God is handling it. And we have to believe and trust in that. That is part of us living a new life in Jesus Christ. Once we learn of the gospel and we start believing, it changes who we are, and we have to follow what Jesus taught us. I am moving on now to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 13. Now who will want to harm you if you are eager to do good? But even if you suffer for doing what is right, God will reward you for it. So don't worry or be afraid of their threats. Instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. Keep your conscience clear. Then, if people speak against you, they will be ashamed when they see what a good life you live because you belong to Christ. Remember, it is better to suffer for doing good if it is what God wants than to suffer for doing wrong. Christ suffered for our sins once for all time. He never sinned, but he died for sinners to bring you safely home to God. He suffered physical death, but he was raised to life in the Spirit. So he went and preached to the spirits in prison, to those who disobeyed God long ago when God waited patiently while Noah was building his boat. Only 8 people were saved from drowning in that terrible flood. And that water is a picture of baptism, which now saves you, not by removing dirt from your body, but as a response to God from a clean conscience. It is effective because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now Christ is gone to heaven. He is seated in the place of honor next to God, and all the angels and authorities and power accept his authority. Referring to the Life Application Study Bible on verse 14 through 15, rather than fear our enemies, we are to quietly trust in God as the Lord of all. We must believe that Christ is truly in control of all events. When he rules our thoughts and emotions, we cannot be shaken by anything our enemies may do. Now, if we go back and look at 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, instead, you must worship Jesus Christ as the Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. We must always be ready to explain our faith in Jesus Christ. And as Christians, we know that we are constantly being challenged. The world is fighting against it. We have so many people in our lives that are just so anti-God these days that people mock you and ask you questions all the time, thinking that they're going to trip you up or make you not believe because of something witty that they think they said, when in reality, that is not true. So we should be ready to defend our faith. We should be excited to tell them about why we have hope and what is coming for us after this life, and that we really wish that they would join us. If you have any opinions or anything you want to add, I would love for you to comment below, and we can have an ongoing discussion and study of 1 Peter chapter 3 together. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that you come back so that we can finish 1 Peter together. Have a great day, guys. Bye.